great-grandfather and his second wife. Valentine Long was a Civil War veteran. He served as a private under the flag of the Northern Army. Valentine enlisted during the late spring of 1862 and fought until the war was over in 1865. He also played with the Army Band alongside Thomas Walters, my father's maternal grandfather. Valentine married a little girl named Lydia Swisher shortly after he mustered out of the military. Together they had 6 children, an equal split of boys and girls. George was born in the fall of 1872 and the second child born to Valentine and Lydia. George is my grandfather. At the age of 8, George lost his mother 1 month after she gave birth to her last child, Mary. After George's mother died, according to the 1880 census, George went to live with his Grandma Long, while the rest of his siblings were divided between other relatives throughout the countryside.
Describe to me what Granddad looked like physically. What kind of stature was he? What color hair? Just give me some kind of a description of what he looks like.
Well, he was just a well-formed man. There's no fat on him. He was well built, but he wasn't robust, nothing like that. Broad shoulders. He's just a nice built man. That's all I can say.
What color hair?
He's about, I suppose maybe he was probably 5'10", maybe 6 foot. I don't know. He wasn't no real tall man, but he wasn't no tall man by a long way.
What color hair did he have?
Huh?
What color hair?
Well, I guess he wasn't coal black, but it was dark hair. I guess probably darker than any of us kids maybe, or about the same. We all but Liddy, she had blonde hair. The rest of us all had the darker hair. But I can't just remember.
After George grew into a young man, it is rumored that he was touched by a bit of a wanderlust and then settled in Minnesota to homestead some land. I have nothing else to base this on except the word of my father. Then, at the age of 30, in 1902, we find George married to my grandmother, Ella Walters, during the early part of the fall and living in Winnemac, Indiana. A year later, they had their first child they named Clarence. By 1922, George and Ella had a complete family of 10 children, 6 boys and 4 girls.
Where did he come from? Do you know where he was born, and a little bit about his history, about where he came from after he was born and how he got to
I don't know. I haven't the slightest idea where he was born. All I know is before he met Mom, I know there's Minnesota, one of them states out there, and he was, as a young man, he homesteaded out there. And I don't know how him and Mom met. I don't know anything about it. But he had plans on going back out there. But he never did make it.
George made his living as a farmer. He owned and worked his farm for over 15 years until 1929, when it was lost to the bank at the very earliest beginnings of the Great Depression. The old house was a 2-story structure with 4 rooms. The living room and kitchen were downstairs, and upstairs were the bedrooms. The house had nothing else but an old wood stove. At bedtime, the family shared the 2 bedrooms. The house was much different than the way it is pictured here in 1994.
We lived out in the country, and where we was at, it was just us and the family. There's no news from anywhere. We didn't have no TV. We didn't have no radio. Go to town maybe once a month. And that was just for what we needed, what they needed, and that was it.
Okay, now describe to me what you can remember about your old home place, the one that you were born and raised in. Physically, what did the building look like? Was it a white house, 10 rooms, 4 rooms?
This is a small 4-room house, 2 rooms upstairs, kitchen and living room downstairs. The old wood heater for a heat. You burn on one side and freeze on the other. But he raised 10 kids in it.
What was it like living in that farmhouse, living on the farm?
Well, actually we didn't have no complaints.
What was your typical day?
Well, on the weekend, on a Sunday, we never did do nothing as far as that's concerned, as far as work. Never even thought about work. Other than that, a typical day, one day was about the same as the other.
Tell me about it. You got up, put your pants on, and then what?
Get up, go out, take care of the horses, take care of the cattle, hogs, whatever there was to do. Go back in, eat, sit down and eat breakfast. Get ready and go to the field. Work till noon. Come in at noon. Eat dinner. Maybe rest a while, go back to the field. And I don't know, probably 5, 6 o'clock at night, we'd go back to the house. We'd get the cows in, we'd milk them, we'd do all the feeding, do all the chores, go in and eat. Then I guess we sit around really and do nothing till time to go to bed.
How did you occupy yourself during that period of time?
Well, I don't know, them memories are very, very faint anymore.
Well, you played with your brothers and sisters, right?
Oh, my brothers and my sisters, we would have our times. We'd get out, we'd play. Games that you'd say was foolish nowadays, but we didn't have the things to do that they have now.
Like what?
I don't just remember how the exact on it, but one thing would take a tin can, we'd have a rock. We called it duck on a rock. And like I say, I don't remember all the details on it, but we'd take them sticks and we'd knock that tin can. Louis, one time, he got his finger between, I don't know, some of our sticks, I don't know whose, and that rock. And that one finger, he can still see it today. But we didn't have the games to play. We'd play hide and seek. No telling where we'd go to hide. The one that was supposed to hide his eyes was supposed to find us. That's about all I know. Your dad always raised onions. We get out there all day long on our knees, pulling the weeds, taking care of the onions. That was what his money crop was at that time. When time come to harvest them, we'd get out there and pull them and lay them in rows and let them dry. Then he'd go out there and cut the tops off, drop them in crates, get them ready for market. Pickles was the same way in season. We was always pretty busy.
Life was hard on the farm, but the family found time for church and school. During the time when my father went to school, things were much different than they are today. Community buildings often doubled for different uses, schools during the week and churches on Sunday. These buildings were often used as community meeting places. The schools may only have one classroom, and several grades would be housed there.
They built a new church, what they called New United Brethren Church, there in Newland. Well, I wasn't too old, but I was old enough to remember building it. But it didn't last no time. And we never went to church, anything like that. We did when that church was open, after they built it, we went to church.
How old were you?
Oh, maybe 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. Wasn't no older than that. I went to school. My first year in school was a one-room schoolhouse, all grades together. The next year, I had 4 different rooms. The grades was separated, I guess, about 2 different grades in a room. I never did finish school. I never finished the 8th grade. Because that's when they sold out, or when he lost everything. When we started to Wisconsin.
After the old home place was lost in 1929, and with no hope of a future in Indiana, George and Ella decided to move to Minnesota, where they thought they could reclaim the land George had homesteaded nearly 30 years before. Somewhere in Wisconsin, the family encountered a severe winter blizzard. They were forced to take refuge with a kind family that took them in until the spring, when the road would be passable.
You said that he had bought some land in Minnesota or something?
He homesteaded it. He hadn't bought it, he homesteaded it.
Okay, and what did that mean?
Well, he took it over from the government. The government gave it to him to homestead. And he was to clear it up, take care of it.
Okay, so then he headed out there.
He had it, he homesteaded it, and then until him and Mom married, I think he kind of rambled a little bit.
So he owned this property before he got married.
Yeah.
And he was going back to it after he had lost the home place there.
Yeah. Whether it would have been open anymore or not, I don't know. Dad drove a car, and Louie at that time had a car. Dad drove and Louie followed. That was in the spring. The roads was bad. We got as far as Winter, Wisconsin. And the roads got so bad they couldn't go no farther. We spent the winter there in Winter, Wisconsin.
At whose house?
Well, I don't remember whose house it was. It was a foreign couple.
You didn't know these people?
Well, we got acquainted with them. We spent the winter there. They lived in one house. We lived on another house there by them.
How did you find the house? Do you know?
That I don't know.
Okay, so anyway, you guys stayed there.
And the road broke, weather broke and the roads got where we could travel, that started on. And I think we drove one day, maybe part of the second day. I don't remember how we spent the night. But anyway, we was heading on for Minnesota. And Dad seen a sign pointing to Chicago. And I don't remember now anymore what it was, but anyhow, it was a place that he could turn around. And he pulled up there and stopped. And he said, we're going back to Indiana.
When the roads reopened after the spring thaw, George and his family were ready to hit the road again. By this time, for a reason unknown to myself, my grandmother had a change of heart about living in Minnesota. So George pointed the car toward Indiana and headed back, giving up his dream to repossess the land he had once homesteaded. Although George continued to farm until his death in 1937, he never again farmed his own land. At the age of 65, George died with complications of blood pressure and a practice of bloodletting, a procedure once performed by doctors and considered it a cure-all. For those who knew him, they would say he was a man of his word and his words were few. George believed in family because he only had one family. For 35 years he stayed with my grandmother and raised his family. For those of us who never got the opportunity to know him, we only have to look to his children to know the man he was.